Doing this morning. Welcome to another photo chat here live with Andrew Banner this morning. And Andrew's been a longtime viewer of my channel and participates in my live streams through the chat section. And I've always been impressed by his responses and uh, comments that he's given in the chat whenever we start talking about uh, different topics and even different types of gear. And his feedback's always been uh, I would say, like, it's coming from someone that's very experienced, like many of you, but, uh, it wasn't some kinda random, like, just, post, right, that somebody would say about something, and it just showed a little, sort of depth to his answers that implied that he had some experience, and I got to one day, I just got a thumbnail on my, YouTube stream, and it said Andrew Banner was the creator there, and I was like, "That's the same guy or not?" But I started watching some of his content, and, I was really impressed. Andrew has so many great videos on YouTube and, you know, specifically about helping you improve your photography, and a lot of his videos are very inspirational just from the images that he creates and the techniques that he uses, and he shares them, in a very, easy way to understand. So I wanted to bring him on as a guest. Come to find out, he has a lot of experience and professional background as well. So I thought it'd be great to have him on today. So without further ado, here's Andrew Banner, and I guess it goes by Andy here. Hey Andrew, how are you? Oh, we lost your audio. Your microphone
Yeah.
is turned off.
Sorry,
There you
sorry,
go.
I coughed a little while ago and forgot to turn it back on. Thanks, thanks for having me on. It's really nice to be part of this.
Yeah, like I was telling people, I just kind of came upon your channel by accident. I had no idea you'd been creating content. How long have you been on YouTube and
Way
actively
too long
creating?
now. It's about 4 years.
Wow. Wow, that's
Uh,
something. You may have mentioned it once or twice before in a stream, but I just, you know how it is. You just can't watch everybody, right?
oh, absolutely.
But the video that caught my attention was something to do with uh people giving misleading information.
Yeah, that video
And
took caught a lot of people's attention.
yeah, and it just showed up as a thumbnail on mine, and it's something. The title was something like they're lying to you or something, and trying to tell you
Um,
about.
yeah, the letters BS feature quite a bit.
Yeah, and I watched it and I said, okay, what is he gonna say? And then I was like, oh yeah, and it had something to do with ISO, I believe, right? And
I've done
exposure.
two now. The first one kind of brushed over it because one of the things I said, which caught a lot of people, well, I say caught them out, I didn't catch them out. It created some controversy. I said that I don't consider ISO to be part of the exposure triangle, and
Mhm.
I've explained that more in a second video on that. But no, it's certainly in digital terms. Um, I don't think ISO should be considered as part of the exposure triangle. It's supplementary.
Exactly, and I feel the same way. I don't talk about it much because it is controversial, and I don't know why. Because
Uh, yeah,
ISO is just simply dialing up the exposure in the camera, not so much because you're increasing the sensitivity of the sensor or anything like that. It literally is just a digital conversion from dark to bright, like any slider in your software.
pretty
Uh,
much. Yeah.
I mean, there's some nuances there, of course, but for the most part, yeah, the ISO should not be part of the exposure. Hitting the sensor, which is controlled by aperture and shutter speed. And then
Exactly.
everything
Yeah.
after that is all software driven in the digital world.
I think the problem with the term exposure triangle is that there there's a propensity to think that if you move something on this axis, then something on that axis must move, and also the bottom must move, and that's not true. Only two need to move.
Right.
Well, of course, only one technically. Whether you get correct exposure or not as a result of that is immaterial. But just the whole idea that they all move in proportion is just wrong. And I think that's the idea. I think that's where the exposure triangle falls apart with ISO.
Exactly. There's just not a direct correlation between the three exposure elements, right? And if you take out ISO, then there's a little more correlation to the final exposure. But anyhow, I don't want to get it too deep into that because we could talk for an hour about it. But it goes to what I think there's just so much misleading or information online. I remember watching a video where a guy was testing the image quality based on what SD card he was using.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, okay, maybe there's something I'm missing here, but I watched it.
I don't think you're missing it.
I watched it and he would pixel peep and he would like see the difference here and here. And I'm like, are you serious? It's not like he was taking a picture of a static scene either. He was like taking a picture of like a seascape where things are moving around.
I'm sorry. I mean, such things are just pure BS.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally understand.
It might not be deliberate. He might believe this. Someone may have said something to him in the past that's made him think this. And it's, be careful what you believe.
Yeah. So it's, I and I don't want to, anyway, I don't like to underestimate someone's concern about things that might affect their final image quality, because maybe it does and I'm just not aware of it, right? Because things can get very complicated.
No, you're being very very charitable with that there, Rob. Very diplomatic.
But all I can say is, I didn't see a difference, no matter what SD card I used.
No, and neither will you.
sort of getting beyond that, but that's kind of one of the first videos I saw, and then watching the other ones, I really liked a lot of the ones you did with your mushrooms and using lighting, like LED lighting, and I also really liked your ICM, something I'd really like to do more of and be more creative. So I'm going to tap on some of your experience there. But let's just start out with sort of the basics of, like, when you go out on a photo walk, and let's say you don't have anything particular in mind that you're going to shoot, what typically do you take with you, sort of be ready for anything?
I normally take everything that I can load onto my back. It is the honest answer. It's very rare I'll ever go out without this, and that's always on the camera, or one of these two are always on the camera, because luckily I can fit the camera and whichever lens into the bag without any adjustment. So they'll both go in and they can both be attached to the camera. So that's great. The bag is we'll take either in the right configuration, and often I will take the 60mm macro as well.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me back up. The other two lenses, that was a 12-40 and a 40 to 150.
I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, 12-40 and a 40 to 150.
Okay. And then and then the macro.
Often I'll take the macro, not always. That's if I'm not going into a wood, then almost certainly I won't take the macro. But if I'm going into the woodlands, I'll probably will take it, because that's where I'm most likely to find something that I'm going to want to get close to, or super close at least.
Right. And do do you take like any accessories like tripods and filters? Are those kind of like in your regular pack, or that?
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, the backpack has got a set of magnetic filters in it, largely because they're small and easy to use, not because they're necessarily the best, but they're good enough. Having said that, I don't think. I mean, I'm using the K&F ones, and I think the glass that they use in one filter is the same glass that they use across the entire board, unless there's something special about it. So I take that with me. There's always I say always, unless I've forgotten it, of course. There's a cable release in there. There's multiple batteries. And if I'm intending to shoot macro, I'll take this thing with me, which is something that is well, I kind of built this out of a couple of angle pieces. There's a video about it, but what this enables me to do is suspend the entire camera underneath the tripod the right way. There's an Arca Swiss,
Right.
and I can get right down to the ground and have probably cost a maximum of 15 quid. You know, $17, $18.
Well, that's a great idea. That's a great
But
idea.
that has done so much good work because I don't have to turn my brain upside down to work out where the buttons are.
I know, right? Yeah, because it's tricky working with the screen inverted.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then I also notice you use some small LED lights too. You always bring those with you, or?
They're there. Well, some of them are there. I will often take one of the little square ones with me, just because it's in the bag.
Yeah.
And if I'm intending to do more work with macro, if it's mushroom season, for instance, I will load as much in the bag as the zips will take.
Yeah.
Purely because you don't. Yeah, if you haven't got it, you can't use it.
Right. Right. Right.
I'm not a believer in going light, so to speak. I'll get
Okay.
somewhere and I'll look in the bag and where is it? Oh, damn! And yeah, I'm deflated as a result of not getting. All of a sudden, the job becomes more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Particularly when
I'm.
your knees don't like being having all this bulk put on them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How about like flash photography? Do you do much of that? I haven't seen too much on that on your channel.
The only time I've used flash in the last kind of 4 years is for water drop photography.
Okay.
I haven't done it. I certainly don't take it out with me. There was a reason I might have wanted it a few weeks or months ago, and I got the flash out, but I can't remember what it was. So it obviously wasn't. It obviously didn't lead to anything because I don't remember any images from it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's cool. So you just kind of bring as basically, I mean, your kit overall is not that much, right? You got your camera, two, maybe
Yeah,
three lenses, and some filters, basically, right?
and then whatever else I can shove into the
Yeah, tripod and
into the bag. Yeah,
and a bracket. Sure.
I'm generally carrying 2 tripods because I'm filming often. So
Right.
there's one to carry the Osmo Pocket or whatever the video camera is, and
Right.
one to take the other one.
Right.
But,
Okay.
luckily, I've got the incredibly light little Freewell tripod, and you barely
Oh,
carrying that.
okay. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about your photography and maybe get some tips for people that are kind of just starting out and really enthusiastic about getting into photography and capturing images like they see on your Instagram and Facebook and your website. uh, so they have their camera and they have, let's say, their kit lens, right? uh, if what kind of like accessories would you say would be the next best thing to get instead of like buying another lens? Because a kit lens can do a lot.
Look,
What other
certainly
accessories would
these days are normally very good.
yeah, what would you recommend like as their first, say, couple of accessories to get started doing the kind of photography that we're going to talk about uh your macro, your ICM, your landscape, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I would say top of anyone's list should be a tripod.
Hmm.
A lot of people say, well, I don't need a tripod because stabilization is so good and the like. And I don't hold with that because that's not the primary reason for carrying a tripod. It's certainly not the reason I use a tripod. Uh, I use a tripod for two main reasons. Firstly, it slows me down. It makes me think about what I'm doing. Yeah, if I've just got the camera slung around my neck, I can just raise it to my eye. I can take a picture, and 9 times out of 10, it's a snap. But if I'm taking the trouble to attach it to a tripod and get the tripod in the right position and such, that is a considered approach to something, and the image is generally better as a result.
Interesting. So you use the tripod as a as part of your workflow to improve your photograph, the image, not necessarily to improve the image quality.
Absolutely,
I
absolutely. It
see.
forces you to slow down.
Wow, okay. I never thought of it that way myself, but that makes a lot of sense, because if you take the time to set everything up, you definitely make a more deliberate approach to your composition and thought process of how you're putting elements together and what's going to be in the frame because the
Yeah,
tripod
exactly.
once it's set. Interesting. Okay, that's great. That's a great tip. And I always tell
Well,
people to get a
this,
go ahead.
sorry.
Well, my initial advice is the same. Always get a tripod, but I never talk about what you just said about it makes your photography more deliberate.
It's certainly one of the key reasons. I do like to walk around without a tripod because obviously it's a problem. It's heavy. It's certainly certainly I wouldn't do walk around the city streets with it particularly because it's just really really challenging. Um, but just this whole concept of making your compositions more considered
Yeah.
is the primary reason I'll carry it. But the secondary reason is repeatable compositions.
Mm,
So if if the camera is always in the same place, no matter when you press the shutter, you're going to get the same composition, so long as things obviously in the frame haven't moved. Uh,
right.
but you can then get your composition and you can wait for things to come into frame. You can wait for the light to move. You
Mm,
can you can arrange your own LED lights and whatever. It kind of links in with the first part of this, but it's also that as 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 everything's constantly changing around us, the point at which we take the photograph initially isn't necessarily the best time to take it. And if we're happy with the composition, then the tripod will lock it there and we can wait for the best time to take it. One of the
right.
great things I find about actually Arca Swiss is obviously you can leave the tripod there and then you can take the camera off and go off and take some snaps and whatever of other things while you're waiting for things to happen, while you're waiting for that sun to come out or for golden hour to come or whatever, and then you can plunk your camera straight back on the tripod and it's where it was when it started.
Wow. Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent advice. Because yeah, when you think about tripods, I always think about uh, trying to get the best image quality and maybe doing long exposures, maybe doing panoramas, but I never think about like waiting for that decisive moment. A lot of times I know it's going to be 15 minutes before the next train comes, and maybe I want to do you
Yep.
know, a shot. So I can just take it off the tripod, get a few shots, then go back, a few minutes before the next train, and I have the composition already decided, already set to what I want.
It's the
So
flexibility of carrying two bodies with you without carrying two bodies.
yeah, right, yeah, that's true. That's true. I bring two cameras a lot myself, but it's certainly that's an awesome tip, is to set up your composition and wait for that decisive moment. And while you're waiting, you don't have to wait. You can take pictures and then put it back on when you're ready, or whenever the scene is ready, so to speak.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow, that's terrific.
Yeah,
And
just don't wait. Don't wait so long that you hear the horn of the train coming, because then it's a panic.
right, right, right. Okay, that's some excellent tips there. Do you have any other tips for beginners, like when they're going out and shooting?
Uh, I think that I define the difference between a photograph and the snap as being simply grabbing the camera, going bang, and saying, "Well, that's done." Then that's a snap, and if it's a good image, then that's probably luck more than judgment. A good photograph, or a more considered photo, that doesn't have to be good, and yeah, no one can be good immediately. And well, you know as well as I do, Rod. These. We shoot so many images that aren't good anyway. Our keeper
Yeah.
rates are normally quite low. So bringing the camera to your eye and finding that composition, just again, it's this idea of just slowing down, because great images don't come from just bang gone. That
Mhm.
if they do, they're pure luck. So slow down, think about what's in the frame, think about what you don't want in the frame. The whole concept of taking a good photograph, for most people, is to keep whatever's in that frame simple. You don't want someone turning around and saying, "Well, what am I looking at?" You want to have the subject, or whatever is in the frame, absolutely blindingly obvious what it is that you're taking a photograph of, and you've got to be careful of not overcomplicating things. Simple
Mhm.
advice that pretty much anyone would give you. Anyone that's done photography for a while will have heard that many times, I'm sure.
Right, right. Yeah, simplify the scene, less is more. There's a lot of different
Yeah,
ways that it's come out. Uh, and composition is really about, you know, finding the point of view where everything, you organize all of the elements in the scene together. There was one photographer, you probably know their name. I'm really bad with names, but he was really good at taking pictures of, like, there'd be like half a dozen people there, but they're all standing in the right position and staggered in a way that, the people, even though they're moving, they made the composition somehow work.
are you thinking of Joe Merovich?
Probably. I I can't remember, but uh and I've always
I'm not
fascinated.
massively aware of a lot of photographers myself. I mean, someone once said to me, "The closest I come to culture is yogurt." Um, so I'm not majorly educated in a lot of the greats as such.
Right, right. Yeah, I study them, or I don't study them, so to speak, but I look at their images and try and figure out, what do I like about it, what I don't like about it. And it's always, yeah, what you were saying is that their compositions are always, it's very clear exactly what the subject is.
Yeah,
Uh, and sometimes it's not a single thing. Sometimes it's the image as a whole makes the composition. There's a lot of different
I,
ways.
I think that's entirely true. Um, One of the things that I often kind of ask, without knowing the answer myself, but I suppose I know the answer. The question is, does an image need to have a subject? And the answer is no, it doesn't. Vistas tend not to have a subject. It's
Right.
just a big, wide image of some, or of a scene. and often that works. Having subjects can make scenes more difficult.
Yeah, and I think a lot of your sort of ICM type photography is a good example of that, where it's not necessarily there's a subject there, but it's the overall composition and blending of light and colors that make the image. Um,
But the image starts with the subject.
mhm,
Certainly in a lot of my work, it tends to. And so, I mean, obviously ICM can be of any subject or any I can't even get it out, genre you like, so to speak. A
mhm,
lot of people will shoot trees as an ICM, and they'll simply do an up-down streak, which is absolutely fine. Yeah, sometimes that works very, very quickly. There's another local photographer around here called Kate Barkley. She is exceptionally good at seascapes and kind of cliff
mhm.
kind of coastal cliffs and such. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. If anyone's looks up Kate Barkley, if you like ICM, you will love
Mm.
her images. I actually struggle a little bit to get those kind of images. I'm not sure what kind of movement she's using to do it and what kind of shutter speed. And I've found more of a, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a niche, but I use a technique which is taught by Andy Gray, where generally speaking, the movements of the camera are very wild,
Mhm.
and but there's always there's always a subject with Andy and now I tend to find a a structure somewhere that isn't massively complicated in itself, but kind of stands out from the background. Something
Mhm.
that is remarkable as a subject, probably in the first place, like a castle or a church tower. I've tried it with windmills. They're too
Mhm.
complicated if they got
Mm.
sails on them. And then taking lots of blends and such from those, and then turning them into an image that often looks like a painting.
Yeah.
A lot of people would liken a lot of this work to Turner.
Well, I think you might have some examples you can share with us, right? Uh,
I
like
have, but yeah, let me find.
okay, because yeah,
Uh,
I do wanna share some images or have you share some images of yours while we talk about, your approach to composition and imagery in general, whether it's like the ICM or, uh, other, woodland or even your macro photography, because they're really impressive, they're really great images.
um, well, maybe I can share my screen on an image from the local concrete jungle that kind of maybe helps out with this particular topic, because I haven't yet scrolled into any ICM. Um, bear with
Okay.
me.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, yeah, ICM is intentional camera movement where, you take your camera and you use a longer shutter speed typically, but you move the camera while the exposure is being taken and it blurs the image.
I'm just going to share this,
Okay.
I think.
Let me know when you're ready.
Uh, um, well, it hasn't shown up on my screen yet, but I've clicked it. There we go.
Okay.
There we go. Right. So we're going to look. Oh. I've got two mouse pointers here, so I'm not sure where I'm clicking.
Yeah.
Um, maybe I'll go to that. That probably makes sense. Is this working for you? Can you see
Yes.
this black and
Yes.
white?
Mhm.
So we're talking about composition and such, and this and a few of the other images around this on the camera roll at the bottom here uh, give you an idea of the kind of things that really grabbed my eye. And immediately, of course, we're talking about leading lines, aren't we? These are very strong shapes that just you can't help but look at them. And if you have a look up here, there's a man right at the very top, about to go. Well, looking for all the world is about to go off. These are statues from Anthony Gormley, and this is the University of East Anglia in Norwich. And there's at least 3 of these dotted around, and of course, these are just really strong lines going through. There's another example of strong line. Oh, not that one. That one. Yeah, again, strong lines, hard light, and it's catching the concrete, leading into darkness and such. These are the kind of things that immediately grab my attention. It's shapes and textures and patterns. Another one being that, which is a stairwell in the same part of the same university.
Right.
These just grab my attention like glue. Again, another one. These are just looking at these now. I can immediately go back to taking these and thinking about all the emotions that I had when I was looking at these, thinking, how am I going to process these? Because a lot of what I do, I do tend to think what the final image is going to look like at the point of at the point of capture. Often there's they don't necessarily turn out in quite the same way, but the idea is a very stark leading line, or dark and light shadow.
Right.
And I think I try to keep them relatively simple. I mean, even if I go back to that, despite it being quite a convoluted staircase and big rotary staircase going up, it is as a static image, just a bunch of lines.
Yeah. And what I notice is there's really a nice balance of light and shadow, right? Along with a balance of like a weight of different things in the scene. So it's not like there's a specific subject, so to speak, but the entire frame, the composition makes up the scene, and is the subject really is this balance between the lights and the shadows and the geometry.
You're being a lot more analytical of this than I could be, and I think that's probably because it's the first time you've seen it. Again, this is the same staircase, and I wouldn't have necessarily came up with what you just said, but I can't disagree with this. Exactly it. I'm a little. I find it difficult to be. To critique my own work in the way that you've just done. And I think there's a real value in getting somebody that isn't attached to your photograph to give that feedback. Because whilst I like this, and I know why I like it, there could be a whole bunch of people that say, oh, I don't like it because of this. There's something wrong with them, whatever. And a whole bunch of other people, as you've done, say, but the balance and geometry and everything. I can't do that to my own stuff. And that's something that I've come to realize more as I show some of these images to other people who do know their stuff, and they can say these things where I just don't notice these things myself. To me, generally speaking, an image, I either like it or I don't. And I come across a problem every single week because I'm putting out videos all the time where I've taken photographs that have got kind of a 3 or 4 minute section of video hanging off of it, and I look at the photo and I think, that's crap. What am I going to... You know this, Rob, because I gave you an image to edit, because I couldn't make it work,
Yeah.
and you did.
Mm.
And I was pulling my hair out with that image, and yeah, I'm forced often to put stuff out and show stuff that I don't like because I've got video kind of hanging off the back of it, and it's probably unfair to cut that part out of the video because I don't like the image, because I'm either I don't like it or it really is just bad, because that's the reality. Whatever we see through the viewfinder or on the screen at the back is a very, very small area compared to getting it back onto a laptop screen or something larger. And all of a sudden, when it becomes larger, it can just expose all of the faults in an image. Whereas, again, often you should view many images as a thumbnail. They look great. You blow them up to full screen, you think, "What the hell have I done?"
Yeah. Yeah. Because yes, and that's a very common complaint. Is a lot of times people say what I saw on my EVF or on the back of my screen just doesn't look like what I have on my computer screen when I go back
Yeah.
to edit, and they end up not liking the image. But that's when you kind of go into post processing and you make it the way that you remembered it. And
Sometimes.
yeah, I tell people just don't be afraid to edit your pictures and create something that you saw like your mind's eye. And that's what, like, that tree log that you sent to me, or tree stump. uh
I can't remember which one it was now.
yeah, it was a tree stump with some logs next to it, and you sort of captured a lot more of the scene than I would have, right?
Oh, I do. Yes, now I do remember it. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
I'm not sure I'm going to embarrass myself by putting it back on screen now.
well, no, don't worry about it. But my point was that, like I said, when someone else looks at it, or when you were there on the scene, you looked at it and you saw something worth taking a picture of, and then you got it back, and it just didn't work on your computer screen. But then when I looked at it, I was able to kind of see what you were, or I was able to see what was kind of interesting in the scene, and just crop out the parts that just didn't matter to me. But like this photo we're looking at now, I just love the geometry here of the angles, and all of the grid lines and the tiles, and then you have that little circle in the middle. So you have a
Yeah,
bunch of straight lines and cross lines,
let me
and then you
zoom
have
in on
one.
that. Actually, you see,
Yeah,
it's actually a light.
yeah, and that sort of just ties it all together, because to me, in the geometry, right, you have the grid lines with the tiles, and then you have the diagonals with the bars, and then you have the step stairs for the rectangular stuff. Uh, they really, they don't quite uh, work together until you put that circle in the middle. And I feel like that little light in the middle ties together all this sort of contradictory geometry.
If only I could have got it, dead center between them, between those bars, eh?
Yeah, yeah,
And I didn't have a tripod.
yeah. I was gonna
Going back
say,
to a previous point, if I'd had a tripod, then I wouldn't have made that mistake.
right, right. Yeah, I was gonna say you probably didn't use a tripod here. But yeah, that's what I've kind of noticed about your architectural type stuff, and that's my favorite genre is architectural, and you have a lot of it here, and all of it's very well balanced. They have accents to them, and of course the light and shadow in the black and whites. It all kind of works together, and that's what I wanted to kind of get an idea of, is when you're approaching a scene. I know you're not. You just said that you're not analyzing it too much, but you just kind of take a picture. You see something you like, and you take a picture. But you are very deliberate about where your lines are and your angles, and you're very conscious of the light and shadow. But is
I
there
certainly try to be, yeah. I've over many years, I've learnt that, yeah, downloading stuff off of the card that I've, yeah, taken loads of photos of and thinking, yeah, these are going to be good, and then coming back thinking, oh dear,
yeah,
I've got to do that again, and yeah, or
yeah,
yeah, just chalk it up to experience. Uh, I can kind of liken it to one of the monikers that you get in DIY and carpentry and anything like that. Is yeah, measure twice, cut once. It's
right,
yeah, if you just take that little bit more time in the field when you're doing it, you won't have to do it again.
right, right. And it's okay if you have to go back and do it again because you get it back home and you look at it and you analyze it like your staircase photo. Next time you go back there, you'll probably center that light in
Yeah,
between.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And luckily, that's quite local to me. Yeah, it's a 15-mile drive. It would be rather more challenging if I had to get on a plane to get it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Uh, okay, so, but how do you, you know, I guess if you were to put your composition or your thought process in any kind of order, what do you look for first you see something you kind of like, right? What do you look for first when you start to compose that image? And we can start with architectural because that's pretty straightforward, I would think. But what kind of order do you go in? Do you look for light and shadow first? Do you look for lines and angles? Do you look for corners? Do you look for accents? I mean, what's kind of your thought process when you approach a scene and you think this might be a nice picture?
I guess that initially, I'm not looking for anything. Initially, things find me, and that may sound weird or highbrow or whatever. It's it's contrast that makes me notice things, and often in the first place, whether it's color contrast or light and dark contrast. Yeah, think of Jurassic Park, where the dinosaur is they're about to attack them, and they say, "Don't move." Yeah, it's attracted to movement. I'm attracted to contrast.
Mm,
It's just kind of like that. So yeah, if we open this and zoom back out, um, it is nothing more than contrast.
yeah,
Yeah, there's lines there, but yeah, it's the black and white elements of it that really work. Um, and sorry, I'm going to have to cough. Hold on. Sorry, I would have muted the mic, but that's not on screen at the moment. Come on. Oh, yes. Clicking. I don't know how to use my own software.
yeah,
So that's kind of where I start from. And then if
mhm,
there's lines in it, such as the vent that we've just been looking at, it's a case of making them straight. And I think
mhm,
actually that probably wasn't. I'm sure that's been perspective corrected. Um, because sometimes you just can't. Yeah, sometimes you've got to tilt up a little bit because it's just ever so slightly above your head, or yeah,
right,
like this one here. I'm looking down on it, so the perspective is going to be a bit ski whiff anyway. So that's had a little bit of work done to
mhm,
it, but it's getting the proportions right from that point on as much as you can.
yeah.
Honing what's there. Of course, every image is absolutely different.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, like for example, that bicycle photo keeps catching my eye, and that rock next to
this
it.
one.
Yeah. Now this has a very low contrast editing done to it, but w- give me
It's
your
something
thoughts
I've been
on
doing a
this.
lot.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of low contrast work recently. I like putting a retro vibe on a lot of images these days. I think it's a phase I'm going through.
Sure.
But of course, this isn't a very old kind of cycle with the springs on the saddle and such, and it's actually a really common feature. It's outside of a shop on the promenade at Cromer, but often it's got it's a coffee shop, so it's got menus and such on it. But this particular time when I was walking past, I'm not certain. I've got hold on. What's the date? How do I find the date on that? September the 5th. No, so it's not the short date. I felt that this might have been on Euro. The Euro football finals day, because there was nobody around. It was just me wandering around Cromer. But it's later than that. I digress. It on this occasion, it just wasn't plastered with the normal things, and I thought that crack in the wall, and the way in which the render in the wall is just kind of patterned and such. You can't ignore things like that. But again, it's contrast. It's what I'm looking at here. It's the contrast between the light of the wall and the relative darkness of the bicycle.
Yeah, and again, the geometry here of the bicycle just naturally, the circles and lines kind of juxtapose each other just by design.
Yeah.
Then you have that crack in the wall that I think it just sort of ties in the imperfections of what the bike is leaning against.
There you go
I don't
again,
know.
Rob. You see, I couldn't couldn't verbalize this over the image. I
Yeah.
probably could over somebody else's, but I'd struggle with my own.
Yeah, I'm just calling out what I see because I edit every week everybody's photos the best I can, and uh, yeah, I constantly have to verbalize what my thought process or what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking, and uh, but yeah, this photo is just kind of stood out to me, and I wanted to share or transition here into your ICM photos. Maybe you can dig up a couple, but I'll try and pull up
Yeah,
on screen.
let's have a look. I'll scroll through. If anyone sees anything that they're interested in at some point, stick something up in the
Let me
chat,
see.
and we might have a look
Screen.
later. There's quite a few stacks here. Sorry.
I have this one here from your Instagram account.
Bear with me. Let me come back. Right. Yes. Let me. I was looking at that earlier. Or actually, you can leave it there if you want.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Let's.
So tell
Because
me a
it
little
may
bit
take me a
about
few.
your technique here and your settings, things like that, how you made this photo.
Okay. So this is. It's a bit crazy. This image is basically hold the camera here, open the shutter, and do something like that, and
Wow.
then do that another 15 or 20 times, and eventually, you get back, you open these all up in Lightroom or whatever you're using, select 4 or 5, put them into something like Photoshop, and I'm using Affinity these days because I've had enough of paying Adobe money,
Right.
and then it's a case of overlaying them so that the major parts of the image are aligned with one another, using various blending techniques on the layers. And generally speaking, depending on your technique, because this kind of movement is obviously a bit weird, and the way in which I tend to describe this kind of movement to people is that there's a linger and then there's a movement,
Mhm.
or there's a movement and then there's a linger. It's best to start with the linger and then go into the movement, because
So I'm sorry, just
You
do
can't
that
guarantee
kind of
where you're going to end.
right. So kind of demonstrate. I have you full screen now. Kind of demonstrate
Yeah.
that maybe a little.
Oh, okay. There'll be an ND filter on the front in order to give me something like a quarter of a second or half a second or so, and it's points roughly at my my subject, and and you've got to do this from the same place. You can't walk around and do this because perspectives and everything will change. You're standing in one place. You're putting uh, the focus point pretty much on your subject every time, pretty much the same place, and it's kind of press, move. I can't do a great deal of it here because I'm going to smash the keyboard, or sod the keyboard, the lens. I'm going to smash the lens. But a lot of it might require the movement with a real big flip of the camera, and obviously I'm doing this with something wrapped around my wrist. Otherwise, it's going to end up on the floor. And there's quite a lot of these, and sometimes I'll go the other way, but the movement generally will always be whoosh around somehow. Sometimes I'll do up and down. It's all about how what the subject looks like. To be honest with you, if you've got a subject that has you've got that's but there's so many ways of moving the camera, but this is just one of those kind of dancing with the camera exercises, and there's probably, I don't know, there's probably 4 or 5, maybe even 6 images that make this up.
Okay, so there's a quite a bit of post-processing too, of layering the images.
Ordinarily, one will take at the very least an hour. And if I'm really being meticulous, well, I mean, the sky's the limit, really. I haven't sold any of them, so I don't have to be that meticulous. No one's paying me a great deal of money for one of these. It's most of my photography is more for me. But, but this is one of the scenes which is just down the coast from me, and anyone that comes within a few miles of this lighthouse is going to go and take a picture of it. It's absolutely iconic around here, and pretty much everyone's photo of that lighthouse is the same. That isn't. I like taking images of honeypot places, of commonly visited and photographed scenes, and I like doing it very differently. Call me weird, or it's just like I like things that are unique. No one will ever produce an image that looks like that.
Exactly, and that's one of the recurring themes I see you sharing on your channel is going to something that's very mundane, something that you've seen 1,000 times, that maybe someone else has photographed 1,000 times, and try different that even if you tried by yourself, you probably couldn't reproduce. This is something that you captured on that day at that time.
Yeah,
Never,
and actually, even if I re-edited it, I wouldn't get the same effect. Even if I used the same 4 or 5 images, it would come out and it would look different from that.
Yeah, and that's what I think is, you can just, I don't know. I'm curious now. I'm curious to go back to a lot of places that I've been to, but but that other one, I wouldn't be able to do it, or even thought about it when I was there. And then on your Instagram, and links to everything about Andrew is down below. But yeah, there's the photography here is very distinctive and very consistent, right, from image to image, I think, which you would post on your Instagram. But yeah, I just love a lot of these images, the simplicity here, you know.
I mean, this shadow here is actually Sean Tucker.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see him.
You bring out, you can see it's him.
Yeah.
I was at the photography show last March in Birmingham, UK, and
because I wouldn't have seen it. Um, and this is why I'm always impressed when I look at, other people's photography and what you're doing here. It's just fantastic. Your ICM photography. Are these do you set your shutter speed to like what, 1 second and then flip around, or is it kind of
I mean,
vary?
I suppose technically, of course, you can do ICM at almost any shutter speed, so long as you can move the camera fast enough.
Yeah.
It's generally speaking, I'm kind of starting at maybe a half a second, a quarter of a second. It's rare I'll do anything over a second, because actually
Mhm.
you tend to find that you kind of made your movement and then you're wondering what to do. And then, can you hold it steady? Do I need to hold it steady? Whereas actually what you really probably want to do, I mean, I say, but there's no hard and fast way of doing it. If you can do that, then great. But I don't find particularly I can. Of course, you can do ICM on a tripod. Yeah, you let the
What?
center column loose and simply go up and down. Sorry, I
Oh,
shouldn't make that kind of movement. But
yeah.
yeah, you simply go up and down with the camera. It's great for trees because you
Ah,
guarantee to have a smooth up and down movement.
oh,
Or you
that's
can
an excellent
pan.
idea.
And of course, panning in motorsport and such, it is
Right.
ICM. Yeah, don't it is of course an ICM, but
Yeah.
you're just tracking something and you're capturing the thing that you're tracking as a still, because you're moving with it.
Right. Right. Oh, that's a great idea with the trees, though. So something like this,
Something like that. I can't remember exactly how that was created, but I'm certain it must have been ICM. I can just about visualize when I was doing it. I think I was making a video about ICM in the woods when I did this.
yeah. But I that using your tripod center column to get a perfectly straight vertical is a fantastic tip for ICM. I would have never thought of that. Um, Again, the like I said, the consistency of the lights, the shadows, and then you have some nice accents here with the guys cleaning the windows, with the geometry. There's just
That
so much
that one was
inspiration
just
here.
a complete lucky spot. I was driving past this building,
Mhm.
um, and I saw them. So I thought, right, well, I've got the camera with me. Yeah, so I parked up, yeah, a couple of minutes walk away, and went back and took the photo, or a series of
Wow.
photos.
Yeah,
But yeah, again, it's just contrast.
yeah,
I was attracted to the contrast.
yeah, and this also a great example of, you don't have to get everything exposed properly, right? Or
No,
exposed to middle gray, I should say. You can a proper exposure is not a definition, right? Proper exposure
indeed.
is what you want it to be. And silhouetting the window washers there, and then having a very strong highlight, right underneath them, I think, just forces your eye right there, and then everything else kind of goes middle gray or dark gray. And this is really an excellent photo.
Thank
Um,
you.
and then yeah, lots of ICM. So I really encourage people to, if you're looking for inspiration for your ICM photos or for your black and whites and landscapes, just check out his Instagram or go to his website. But his Instagram is he's posted. There's a lot of stuff right here.
Well,
Uh,
check out some of the videos as well. That I've got, three or four um, really quite popular ICM videos.
yeah, yeah. So we're
Um,
basically looking over your shoulder while you're creating these images.
yeah,
And
and
you get
I'm describing, kind of what it is that I'm doing and trying to get as a result.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, like I said, I don't know how I missed your YouTube channel all these years.
Well,
It's just
I
amazing.
won't hold it against you.
Okay, so let me kind of talk about like we've talked about sort of your approach. You're looking for contrast, and then you start lining up everything on the scene, or including or excluding things. But what I mean, what do you think a lot of people? What would be like a mistake when they approach a scene that you would say would be the mistake when they take a picture? I know I didn't
I,
articulate that question too well, but I'll
no,
leave it
but
open.
I know what you mean. I just don't know quite how to answer it without kind of harking back to one of the things that I've already said. That
Mhm.
the simplest, the easiest mistake that anyone's going to make is to not think about the final result. Uh,
Mm,
it's this idea of having a snap versus the photograph.
right,
If
right,
you simply raise the camera to your face, or your phone, and it's here and whatever, bang, gone, then chances are it's just not going to be that good.
right.
You need to think about these things. As you know, yourself, edge detection. Make sure that there's nothing around the perimeter of your frame that's going to drag someone's eye out of it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the other thing I noticed in all these images here is, yeah, you don't have things just kind of creeping into the corners or going out of the
It's
corners unnecessarily.
I think actually that that's an important thing as well from me. I consider many things to have a face, um, or perhaps a heading. So yeah, cars have got directional faces, if you like. Yeah, the front of the car, we
Mhm.
know generally is going to be going in that direction. It's not going to be reversing. So if you've got the front of a car, you would probably want the front of the car to be looking into the image. If you're looking
Yeah.
kind of three-quarter side on or whatever, a car's probably not the greatest idea. Somewhere, it's probably not shared on Instagram, but somewhere there I've got photographs of a ship, and of
Mhm.
course, a ship's a better example because it's pointy. So most of the time, I would always want the pointy bit focusing into the image. It's looking in rather than
Right.
looking out, because the eye might grab hold of that pointy bit, see the heading of that pointy bit, and look straight out of the corner of the image, and then you've lost it.
Okay. So I guess try to know your subject. A car is an easy one, right? Everyone knows what cars are.
Yeah,
And include it in the image in a way that would be natural for that car's being in the scene, right? Coming towards
yeah.
you. Right. Okay.
Actually, the image that you've got here, which I call Sentinel,
Mhm.
it is not a bad example of this, because you've got these branches, and I know I'm not sharing my screen, but the branches that kind of come down from this tree and work more into the center of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, if they were going off in the opposite direction, there's a good chance that your eye might pick those up and follow them out of the frame.
Right. Yeah, because the branches at the top kind of frame what's going on behind there with the stream and the tree and the
Yeah.
light kind of coming in between. So, yeah, this is another really excellent composition in woodland
I, I was
photography.
I was really, really, really happy with that image. I've got that as a print somewhere. I haven't framed it up yet, but that's that's one of my favorite images of all time, actually.
Yeah, it really stands out, and it's an excellent job. And I think again, the balance of the light and the shadows, uh, the framing of using what's there, like the other tree in the foreground at the top is framing what's in the background, and then the water just sort of leads your eye up and around the tree. And
Yeah,
again, the branches you can't do anything about, but you did compose them in a way that keeps your eye inside the frame there. They don't take you out.
It's a slightly awkward position to work from as well, because I'm actually in the water to get this,
Yeah.
I didn't have decent footwear on and such, so I'm kind of balancing on rocks and such, so I don't get soaking wet. I think this is in a video somewhere, one of the early videos, and
Okay.
it's you're somewhat limited in what you in where you can put the camera, and unless you've got Wellington boots on and a good deal of confidence you're not going to go head over heels by
Right.
stepping on something slippery.
And that's the thing is a lot of these shots, we don't know what the photographer went through to get it sometimes. Because sometimes the shot is mediocre, but then when you tell the story behind how you got the shot, it's like, oh, that's actually a really great photo.
Yeah.
But this photo just sort of stood out on its own, and then there's a great story behind it too about how you captured it and things. And woodland photography is definitely an area that I think there's a lot of interest in, but it's one of the hardest, for me at least. And
It's
like
incredibly difficult.
yeah, like this image here is really amazing, and it's really the balance of colors in this case, not so much the light and shadows. Uh, and there's actually some complementary colors in there between the oranges and the greens and the reds. And the yellow is more like a highlight here, I think, to the scene.
I like these kind of images because because those yellowing leaves at autumn fall just tends to, if they pick up the light properly, then they're just kind of little fireworks just
Yeah.
dropping. They're just lovely little bursts of color.
Yeah, this is a great so this is a composition again where there's not like a specific subject, uh, like a lighthouse, right? This is more of
Yeah.
a the subject is the entire scene itself and the blend of colors, the explosion here of color, I guess is the way to put it, uh, between the reds and the yellows and the greens.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, lots of
One of
good
the best tips for woodland photography is to actually look for shapes. Don't look for trees. Look for shapes.
yeah. Okay. So here again, this one is more like a light and shadow type thing.
Yeah.
Uh, but again, it's really well balanced. And the splash of yellow leaves and things, just like I said, there's not an individual subject here. You've just sort of brought everything in together. And this is another excellent image here.
It's one of those times where something might or just might not work, and the color's working for it here. Yeah, the
Right.
way those silver birches just kind of stand out from everything else stops it being a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, there's really some awesome photography. I mean, I kind of cherry pick some of the other ones here. Like this, honestly, like
Hey,
this image here.
all of these are cherry picked, believe me.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is like this image here is excellent, but this feels more generic, right? Because you have
Hmm.
sunset, with a surfer here, windsurfer. Uh, but I like how you put the sail right into the sun here. This part really makes the entire image just a little bit special as opposed to your generic, surfer in the sunset type image. Um,
What what works for this, and of
mhm,
course, it's going to be difficult for viewers to necessarily see this because of sizing and everything else, and compression. But the image, you can actually see the lines between the surfer and the sail.
yeah.
So what's working for it is the fact that everything's on a diagonal. One thing leads to another.
Mhm.
So there is both a visual connection, but the diagonal connection is really what's causing the relationship to those two things to absolutely work. Because even if you can't see those chords, you know they're there.
Yeah. Yeah, that just, like I said, this is what stood out to me first was the way the sail is arching right in front of the sun. I thought that's kind of
A
what caught
lucky
my eye
shot,
first.
one way or another. That
Yeah.
was one of about 400 images.
Right, spray and pray, right?
Well, I mean,
Well, I
yeah,
mean,
you EM1 Mark II, yeah, focus tracking and such. I mean, it's when you've got that kind of contrast, it works relatively well. But yeah,
yeah.
still getting because of course these two things aren't necessarily on the same plane, and I think that was probably shot with the 40 to 150 with the teleconverter. So
Mm,
you know, tracking everything and getting them. Getting it in focus. That was a bit one of the biggest challenges, actually, is
yeah,
making sure I had enough.
focal length.
Mm.
But yeah, that was nice, and there's a lot of beautiful images here, so for you guys to look at and really gain some inspiration from. And I just want to ask you one or two more questions, and then for people watching in the stream, if you want to ask Andrew any questions, you can start posting them now, and I'll try and get to them. Um, but you do a lot of editing, and for your ICM photography and the other ones as well. The other editing is more pretty much straightforward editing, right? You just contrast and sharpening. But uh, there's I wanted to get your thoughts on what you think about all of this AI type editing that they have now. It kind of started with maybe the like sky replacement type photography. That was kind of the first thing, and that I thought was fair for commercial purposes, but I felt like for personal photography.
Aren't they? Well, the one thing that I don't like is people typing into a computer. This is what I want. AI do it, because yeah, that is certainly on Facebook and such. That's damaging photography because there are people out there that will look at these things and they're perfect images. Yeah, apart from the fact that things have only got 3 fingers or whatever.
Yeah.
I know this.
Yeah.
Um, but people are then thinking, wow, that's a wonderful image. I see it in bird photography a lot. There's people, putting up photos of photos of bald eagles and such. Isn't that wonderful? And you got all these people kind of swooning over it, saying, "Oh, how did you get that?" Well, hey, you
Mhm.
got that by typing. Um,
Oh, yeah.
that's wrong. I'm sick of seeing it, and Facebook's full of it. I don't want to use Facebook as a result of a lot of that and many other problems these days. Um,
Yeah.
I think if when we then because AI again has so many different levels, doesn't it? Because the AI can be used for setting up a mask. The
Mhm.
in Lightroom, it's got sky selections and such, and it's using some degree of AI to find those. It doesn't always do a good job. Hey, absolutely fine if it's saving someone some time so that they can apply their own um, uh, filters and drag the highlights down and such to bring the clouds up and dehaze it a little bit. Great, if that sky selection has saved them 5 minutes of doing it manually, why not?
Mhm.
But if that sky selection is then there to take out the original sky and put something else in, it's great technology. But the question that goes through my mind is quite simply, why? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to make your photo better using somebody else's components?
Right.
And if you are you then going to pretend it's your photo? Because all of a sudden it isn't.
Yeah.
It's yours and somebody else's, with probably actually very little additional input from you. Um, if you're doing it for your own purposes, absolutely fine. But I think the biggest worry is that particularly the way that the media is at the moment, is that journalistic photography, documentary photography, might end up being manipulated in not dissimilar ways. And of
Yeah.
course, that's entirely wrong. Yeah, if you're producing a piece of art, probably I don't care what tools you've created or you've used to create that art, so long as you're not trying to sell it as something that it isn't. That's my problem. The ability for people to not tell the truth about what it is that they're presenting as their work is increasing all the time. Once upon a time, you might have had to give it to somebody else to do that, and now you can do it with a couple of key presses. And that, yeah, if you say this has been manipulated, I don't see anything wrong with it. If you don't and you pretend it hasn't, then we've got problems.
Yeah, I remember there was a lot of controversy over one of Peter Lick's photos of a moon and clouds, and it's like, how do the clouds get behind the moon?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
because
there was controversy over these Samsung things a few years ago, wasn't there, with moons?
yeah,
Because people were pointing these phone cameras at moons, and they're getting beautiful detail of the light that you're not going to get even with a 600mm lens. And it's like, how does it do it? Well, it's doing it because it's recognized it's a moon. It's taken a stock image and bunged it on.
yeah, yeah. That was shocking. I remember that. I remember that they were just putting a moon photo in your own photo.
yeah, yeah. Nice little blend of it, and
Yeah,
I just
golly.
it took a long while for them to come clean on that.
Yeah, that's and you and I think are on the same page there that AI is just you can go too far, and it's okay if you disclose that, right?
Mm.
But yeah, for your own photography, you have to, I don't know, like I said, I like to be as original as possible to what, the pixels were, but then changing light and shadow and cropping to me is perfectly fine.
Well,
Eliminating
that's
minor
happened.
distractions, I think are okay, like brushing out maybe a little branch that peeked into a corner. Things like that don't
Yeah,
bother me.
I'm guilty. I do it
Yeah.
quite a lot, and often because I don't spot these things in the first place. I'm editing next week's video right now, and one of the things I spotted in this is a shot of trees across a fenland, and I spotted it at the time, and I point it out in the video that there's a post that's been kind of hammered in, and it's just white post, and it's like, oh, that's ugly as hell, but I can't get rid of it as
Mhm.
just by simply moving around. It's just in the wrong place in the frame, and I don't mind cloning that kind of thing out because it's not natural. It's been put there. Yes, it might be there, but it's it has no place within the photograph,
Right.
and it's 6 pixels wide or something. So taking it out for me isn't an issue because to leave it there is a problem. And actually, the reason I spotted it whilst taking it, or rather, I didn't spot it initially, is because. And this is one of my real gripes. I'll go back to this kind of camera handling and such. I don't know why I'm picking it up. The screen overlays really can become a damn nuisance. You've got all of this EXIF data
Yeah.
on screen,
Yeah.
and particularly the histogram because it's bloody huge, and it obscures your view. So
Right.
this post is hiding in the histogram,
Yeah.
and I noticed
Yeah.
it afterwards.
Yeah, that's a good point, is, you can you, you might miss something because it was underneath the setting that's overlaid on the
Happens all the
screen.
time.
Yeah.
It's actually a real problem. I don't know. I'm not terribly familiar with other cameras. It's quite a big problem on the Olympus because, of course, most of this data is around the edges, so your edge detection is hampered.
Right.
You've got to try and get rid of it to make sure there's nothing creeping in. Otherwise, you may end up cloning or cropping after the fact.
Right. That's a good point. So I do see a question here about filters, and I had a question myself. Uh, I mean, do you use a lot of filters? And I'll expand on that. Uh, what kind of filters do you use?
I don't use a lot of filters. I would generally carry with me a polarizer and a couple of ND filters.
Hmm.
No creative filters at all. I've got a white mist back there. I think I've used it once. I don't. I think the mist filters and such, they're a little bit more difficult to recreate in post. But certainly not impossible. I mean, ultimately, they're just a bit of a glow, aren't they?
Hmm.
I see things like that as more suitable for video work.
Yeah.
But no creative filters generally would I carry, other than just a polarizer and a couple of NDs.
Hmm. Okay.
Sometimes I'll carry an ND grad.
Right. Right. And then, for your ND filters, you like the solid ND filters more so than, say, a variable or.
I'm no fan of variable ND filters.
Mhm.
Generally, they have their place, and again, I think it's more video than it is
Yeah.
photography. There's different qualities of them, of course.
Yeah.
Some aren't great, and some are very expensive. um,
Yeah.
I I don't know. I haven't yet found a variable ND that I like using, and that
Mhm.
may sound very strange, but I I, I I feel more comfortable putting filters on it and taking filters off
Mhm.
than twisting it to make it lighter or darker.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
of course, there's always a trade-off with a variable ND because it can't do the job as well as solid filters.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I like the variable ND, uh, but yeah, I think it would be simpler just to put on a solid like 5-stop ND, and then I don't have to worry about my settings. I can just set them once.
Sure,
Uh,
and actually, a lot of it does depend on your filter system. So this is a
mhm.
magnetic on here, so it's as simple as you like. But if you've got
Yeah,
screw-ons, then that's a lot more complicated. Well, I say a lot more complicated, but
yeah,
it's more complicated, and then they might get stuck, and all kinds of other issues. So, uh, for convenience, the magnetics are very good.
yeah.
I mean, they're not great in every situation, but I've yet to find a situation where I would immediately say, "Oh, if only I'd have bought the square set out."
Right. Yeah, what do you think about the square filter systems? I mean, they feel to me, I'll preface this, to me, it seems like kind of overkill. And if you're a dedicated landscape photographer, maybe. But what are your thoughts on that?
I'll tell you very briefly about where I kind of started with them. So I started with screw-on filters many years ago,
Hmm.
because generally speaking, that was the entry level, and I kind of stayed with them more because it was the entry level. They're cheapest.
Right.
Um, and I kind of then moved into the Kokin um, style square filters, and I prefer those for the flexibility. If you needed to take a filter out, you took a filter out. If you had stacks of filters all screwed in, then it was a lot of playing
Yeah.
about. Um, and of course, now we've got the magnetic systems. Um, I think square filters have got their benefits, and one of the biggest benefits of the square filter system is the ability to have a graduated filter, because of
Mm.
course it can be put in and adjusted up and down, which of course you can't do with a circular filter.
Right.
So that's by far and away the biggest benefit of a square filter. Handling obviously isn't as the same. There's no speed necessarily with the square filter. But go back to where I started with the tripod. Should you be trying to rush it anyway?
Right.
Again, yeah, the square filter may well just slow you down, and you may need to be slowed down. There's horses for courses. I've actually got a script somewhere for comparing the different type of filter systems, and I was going to make a video about it. I just haven't done it yet. But yeah, the ultimate is convenience. Magnetic for sure. And this ring doesn't leave my my camera now. But I've got two square systems. I've got a Lee system, and I've got the K&F framed system, and I think they're absolutely fine. But it depends on how you want to work, I think.
Yeah, I guess the idea of being able to adjust the graduation of the filter,
Yeah,
with the square system, that definitely has a place. 'Cause like you said, you can't really duplicate that. I guess I don't know what I would probably do unless it was a super long exposure is just hold you could do a black card and kind of shake it in front.
yeah,
Yeah.
you could.
Yeah. There's all kinds of ways to get the job done, right? Problem
Well,
solving in the field.
it's how you do it in a dark room.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. I didn't see any other question. If anyone has any questions for Andrew, just go ahead and post them now. And I wanted to maybe ask you a little bit about because this kind of came up with what I like to do a lot of panos. I don't know. I didn't see too many panos in your portfolio. But do you do a lot of panos or?
Well, of course, you wouldn't post a pano to Instagram.
Right.
Not unless it was a vertical one. I don't do a lot. I did one that if I share my screen again, and I'll find this image.
Let me close these, and you can try one more time.
That one. There we go. Let's see whether that's going to come back. Now, this was quite recent, but it may take me a moment to find it here.
I love doing panos, and I've been doing them kind of handheld. I'll just jibber jabber a little while you're finding that.
Yeah, I remember you saying you were doing handheld panos the other day.
But now I'm trying to get
over it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a little more precision because when I was doing panos before, like for my paid work, right? Yeah, I was all in, right? I had the rotator, I had the nodal ninja, I had all kinds of things. But I haven't had a pano job in years, so I just kind of just do them handheld. But I'm thinking, uh, I should go back to and maybe do a video about it, but doing serious panos, right? And you had mentioned in one of the streams that you prefer the sort of the bowl type leveling versus, I kind of like the screw type myself. But anyway, let's talk about your pano. I see you have one here ready.
Well, I've got one here. This isn't a camera pano as such. It's just a 16 by 17 crop, which is exactly how I've envisaged it in camera. I'll show you the stitch pano in a moment. But I like this this format. These 6 by 17 strips. They're really graphic. Yeah, you can do an awful lot in them, but obviously it takes a particular type of scene to work with it. And I was stood in front of these things only a couple of months ago. I photographed these before, or more specifically, probably just one of them, and it's Again, they're really graphic. They got a lovely shape to them, but the light this evening was just wonderful, and it's just got this this layered. Well, it's not even necessarily layers because there's no depth to it particularly, but you've got the the lines that intersect various parts of this, and they were just lucky enough to get this cyclist going through at the right time. And,
Yeah,
he's not
that's pretty good
he's
timing.
not perfectly central, but he's good enough.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's definitely some nice layering here. You know, you have a nice green foreground, and then your midground is the bicyclist with the benches, and then of course the background is the landscape itself. So there's
Yeah, or
definitely some good
seascape here.
layering. Or seascape. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is the
yeah,
promenade at Great Yarmouth.
yeah. That makes sense. That would be sand with the sea behind it. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
some good layering, good geometry, good symmetry. I mean, this picture has uh, everything really, and what makes it different is the timing, right?
yeah.
With the bicyclists in the center. And I like this. I
I mean,
like the little red
with
accent.
him it works.
I'm sorry.
Without the cyclist, it works as well.
Yeah,
But yeah, just that added element of dynamic within it.
right, right. And there's just a little red accent that I think, whatever that is, don't
Oh,
walk on the
here,
grass sign. I
yeah.
think,
Well, this is a bowling green.
mm, so yeah, that's something that I think a lot of people might brush out, but I say it's better to leave it in.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah. I
just,
mean, it's real.
yeah, yeah. So, because otherwise this would look like an AI image potentially, right? If it was too
It
perfect.
could it has that potential, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I see a question here from Brian. Uh, hey Brian, how are you? Brian James. Uh,
Hiya, Brian.
yeah, everybody knows Brian, the M43 guy says, does Andrew shoot with a particular output medium in mind rather than shoot for all media? I.e., I'll often shoot with social media in mind and then shoot differently.
No. Um, it's very rare that I have social media in mind when I'm taking photographs. I think for the simple reasons I don't care.
Hmm.
I'm not bothered about what other people think about the photography. If I think it's good enough to share, then I'll share it. And yeah, I do like the likes. I mean, who doesn't? But
Yeah.
what I find actually is that a lot of my photography style doesn't get the likes, and that's because the audience isn't the right audience for the image. As a good example of this, and I always hesitate to kind of blow my own trumpet. I post a number of images to Frames magazine on Facebook,
Hmm.
and the the images that I post that get editors' applause are invariably images that do not speak to the majority of people. So these images might only get 3 or 4 likes of the thousands of people that are looking at this this Frames magazine page. But the one person that I want to impress on that is Thomas, the editor of the magazine,
Hmm.
and I can do that with reasonable consistency by posting images that, like this, I think this one may have got an editor's applause. I think it did, um, because it's you can't ignore the image. Yeah, it's one of those images. And again, I'm sorry if I'm sounding a bit kind of top heavy here, but to me, it's one of those images that would stop me scrolling, and that's what I aim for.
Okay. Very good. I'm the same way. I don't think about social media first. I think about the image first.
Yeah.
And Roger has a question is what camera body are you using on your professional jobs? So do you still work
You
professionally or what did you use before?
there's there's someone making an assumption I'm a professional. um,
Right.
uh, no, I've The only professional work I've ever really done is in support of my own business, whether that was in web development going back, or whether it was in support of magazine work that I was doing at the time and such. I've avoided being a professional in the sense that someone pays me to go out and take photographs, because
Mhm.
I'm scared that I'd stop enjoying it.
Mm.
I've done many things in the past that I've enjoyed as a pastime, as a hobby, that I've turned into things that I earn money from, and I grow to hate them,
Mm.
because the pressure builds and it builds, and I've got a problem with myself where I don't think I'm that good at a lot of things, and there's an element of imposter syndrome. And what I don't want to do with anybody is overpromise and underdeliver, and I'm always afraid that I'm going to do that. So I'm very,
Yeah.
very cautious about working for someone where they have a level of expectation, because I fear that I might not meet it, and I don't want the conflict of even myself, or between myself and that person, to kind of get in the way. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So yeah,
yeah.
that happens to me too in my professional work. I just always, yeah, I'm always a little bit anxious if I'm going to meet their expectation for what I deliver, and ultimately they end up loving it. But it's yeah, there's always sort of that angst during the job, and then I get home and I look at it, I'm like, oh my god, I got so much editing to do. Anyhow,
Yeah, I know. I was asked to do some photography for my sister-in-law's wedding some years ago, and I said I would. I didn't want to, and in the end, circumstances kind of played out that it didn't happen.
mm,
But I was absolutely dreading it. And the
yeah,
worst thing I could possibly be would be a wedding photographer, because I would not want to ruin somebody's big
right,
day. I
right.
wouldn't want their memories to be, Jesus, why did we hire him?
Right. Okay, and then
Um,
this side towards screen says, I'm new to Andrew's photography. Do you use a tripod monopod for both landscape and macro, flash or lighting or natural light? And we've touched on this a little earlier, but go ahead and
monopod, almost never. The only time I'll use a monopod is if I'm working with wildlife, and that's
mhm,
very rare, because I don't have the patience generally for wildlife. For landscape, I'd say 85% of the time I'm using a tripod.
mhm,
And for macro, 99% of the time I'm using a tripod,
yeah,
which of course really precludes me from doing any insect photography. And again, insect wildlife, I don't really have the patience for it. But again, I don't also really necessarily have the equipment for insect photography, because really you do need a flash, and I do have a flash,
mhm,
but I don't have a diffuser. And without a diffuser, you're just going to get hotspots all over the damn thing.
mm,
So whilst I would give it a go, I've got to, one, find the money to buy a diffuser, and two, find the enthusiasm to go and start looking for insects.
right, right.
I suppose it's easier in summer.
Yeah,
They normally find me in summer.
I do so little myself that haven't even bothered to buy a macro lens yet because it's just I'm content with using an extension tube. Uh, let's see, and then
I got a very cheap macro lens sent to me the other day,
okay.
from TT Artisans, I think it is. Yeah, up here. And I haven't really played with this yet, but this thing is a 40 mil macro lens, and like a lot of the Chinese
Yeah,
budget manufacturers, yeah, solid. I mean, this thing weighs more than the camera almost.
I know, right?
But I'm going to give that a go. But this thing is $99.
Yeah, that's good.
So you don't have to spend a lot of money if you're going to do macro. I mean, you can get a Raynox or a close-up Nissy filter or
Right.
something.
Yeah, I got a similar. Yeah, I use extension tubes, and now I have the sort of a Raynox knockoff, which works pretty well. But even with that, I just don't take it out much and do much macro myself. And then here's a question about do you use mini tripods for macro like the forest ground floor shots?
No, I detest them. They're not flexible enough. So I showed this earlier. If you weren't
Mhm.
here, I think it's Roger. This. So let me just put the camera back in this. This is an arrangement of a couple of L brackets screwed together with an Arca Swiss plate on the top here, an Arca Swiss clamp at the bottom, and that sits on an inverted center column on the tripod. I can get right on the floor with that, and my
Yeah,
camera remains the right way round, so I'm not trying to invert my brain working out where all the buttons and everything are.
right.
So I will use that on an inverted center column, and
Yeah,
that gets me everywhere I need to go.
yeah. That's an awesome idea. Just a couple of L
There, there-
brackets. And,
there's a video about this on my channel. It's
okay.
$15 of gear if you haven't, and a couple of clamps that you probably already got.
Right, right. Okay. I think I did once. I put like a uh sort of an inverted hot shoe mount, and I attached an
Yeah,
artificial plate to that.
I've used those kind of things.
But
So yeah, it kind of just sits in here, and you've got your plate on the top.
right,
That was the first kind of iteration of this. There are issues with doing that.
yeah,
Firstly, that's not really designed to take the weight of the entire camera and lens.
right,
Um, uh, and the biggest problem actually with doing something like that, particularly if you're using a ball head, is that you'll tend to clamp your ball head down so you've got friction, because obviously, yeah, if that's just flapping around everywhere, it's of no use to you. So you need some friction, so you kind of push it into place, and then and then it holds there. Well, the thing with that, of course, is if you're only clamping off your hot shoe, is the way that you're positioning your camera is by literally moving the camera, and that's putting all of the stresses on the hot shoe.
yeah,
And yeah, that causes some other difficulties. The other big problem with that is often your little clamp on the hot shoe will come loose
yeah,
because obviously it's got a lot of movement going through it.
yeah,
And then you pick something up, and all of a sudden your camera's fallen 3 feet to the floor. There are ways around it. I cover it again in the video, but yeah. So I think the hot shoe attachment, cheap version, very cheap, really. You need what, 3 pieces,
yeah.
but
But that was just
there are
something
big detractions for it.
it was something I was doing indoors to try to record something on my table. But in the field, yeah, you don't want to use something like that. You want to use like what you set up, something with some more durability and takes the stress, puts the stress
Yeah,
where it's designed to be is on the tripod mount.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
there's a question here regarding distracting things in the frame being obscured by the viewfinder information. Is it not possible to press the info button on the camera to not show this? Yes.
Yeah, of course you can. But you've got to cycle through things, so it's often more than one press, and then the moment that you press the shutter button again to refocus, half the damn things come back.
Yeah, and
So you've got to be mindful to remove them.
yeah, for me, I I don't know. I just like to see all my settings all the time, and particularly like the level meters, I use a lot. So,
But if you're not using a tripod, then they're
well,
important. If you are
yeah,
using a tripod and you've clamped everything down, you're set and
yeah,
forget.
yeah. You make a valid point. I I gotta give some. I gotta try that. Go out with a tripod, clamp everything down, then wait for the scene to happen versus,
Yeah.
you know, not otherwise. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I take my tripod all the time with me, but I only break it out once in a while when I'm thinking about the image quality. I'm not thinking about the composition. And you're sort of doing it the opposite way, which is interesting. And I love that using the tripod column for ICM. That was a great tip
Yeah.
too. Um, lots of great tips
Oh,
there.
something else
So,
with ICM, actually, if
yeah,
I can quickly go back to that, turn your stabilization off. You don't want the camera fighting to make your
yeah,
image stable.
right, right. That makes sense. Turn off image stabilization. Um, okay, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Did you have any final words for our viewers that you'd like to share?
Thank you for tuning in. I don't
Yeah.
know how popular I am, but
Well, um, it's not about popularity. It's about sharing
no, I
sharing
know.
what we know, what when we can, if we can, best we can, right?
Yeah,
And I really appreciate you coming on with me today. I've always appreciated your participation in my regular live streams, but it's so great to have you here live to talk to you more directly and to share what you know or to share your photography experience with everyone. I certainly picked up a lot of tips here myself uh, that I just would never thought of, and also a different way of thinking about my compositions as well. So definitely some lots of great information here and inspiration from your Instagram photos and from your website. The kind of things that the images that you've created are definitely very strong images there
thank you.
that I think anyone
That's very
can.
kind of you.
Yeah, it's really they're really good, and uh, I hope I see you again in the stream soon. And I
Oh,
want
yeah,
to
I'll be there.
thank, and maybe later down the road when we have some other events, I'll be happy to have you on the stream as well. So
That'll be
I
lovely.
will. I want to thank everyone for joining us today and for your questions. And I hope you found meeting Andy for the first time educational, informational, all that good stuff. And I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Thanks so much for joining us today. And
Thank you
I'll see
very
you
much.
again soon.
Much appreciated. Cheers.
Thank